Hey everyone, welcome back. Previous video, we were working on the design layout of the character select screen. So have it up right here. This is our client. You can click the button to select a character. Pops up our character select screen with all of our available characters. Up next, we're going to work on the functionality for what happens when I click on one of these buttons, or click none, or even back actually doesn't do anything, so that we can swap out our in-game character with our selected character. So that's what we're going to do next in this video. So let's go ahead and escape. There's going to be a couple blueprints that we're going to have to work in here, 3 or 4 of them actually, that we're going to have to hop between. So it's going to get a little tricky navigating the best way to approach this. So I think the best place to start is to go inside of our character select widget blueprint. So let's go ahead and go to the UI lobby character select. And let's open up the graph. And we don't need the event tick, killing that. The event construct, however, what we're going to do is get a reference to our game instance. So get game instance. Let's now drag off of this and say cast to, get the game info instance. Pick that up. And let's promote this to a variable called game instance ref. Like so. Next thing that we're going to do is take all of our buttons for our characters, even our empty button, and assign those to an array of buttons, because we're going to want to know when a character has been selected, which one, and for that button that has been selected, we're then going to disable it so that nobody else can select it. So we're going to need an array of all of these buttons. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to take each button, starting with the empty button. We'll control and drag that in. And let's do it this way. We're going to do it in the same order in which we place these, just to make things easier. So this will be the array index 1. Empty button will be 0. Array index 1, array index 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. So let's go ahead and do that. So empty button, and then we'll take Barbarous, take him, drag him in. Take Forge, drag him in. Then we'll take Frosty, drag him in, and Natural. Drag him in. Pit. Drag him in. And Robo. Tusk. And Warrior it should be. So we need all of these. I'm going to try and make them look somewhat neat. Kind of line them all up. Okay. Now with all of that, what we're going to do is right-click, make array. Going to add a pin for each of these, so we'll have 8 total. So 0, 1, 2, or 9 total, but 8 being the last one. 0, like so. Barbarous, Forge, Frosty, Natural, Pit, Robo, Tusk, and Warrior. So this will give us an array of all of our buttons. And we'll promote this to a variable. So let's promote this to a variable called character buttons. It doesn't need to be replicated, because this is for the server only, really. So let's add a comment around all of this and just say get game instance, assign character buttons. So, and that's all we're going to do in here for now. We're going to do the on-clicked for each of these buttons in a moment. So I'm going to compile this and save it, leave it docked, and then go to this tab. And what we're going to do now is open up the lobby game mode blueprint. So go ahead and double-click and open that. And inside of here, we have a script or a node called swap character. So if you find that node that we haven't touched yet, we're going to do that now. And this is going to handle the assignment of the character class that we select and possess that new character so that we can actually, as our node suggests, swap characters. So the first thing we'll do is branch, though, because we want to check and see if when this is being called, is it only the status that is changing, not the character selected? Because if it is, then we're not going to do anything. So I'm going to hold B and left click, create a branch, connect that as the condition, connect this up. Off the true, we are not going to do anything. Off the false, what we're going to do is, first of all, get the controlled pawn that we're currently using, and we can get that from our player controller here. So let's drag off of this and say get the currently controlled pawn. So get controlled pawn, and make sure that that is valid first of all. So is valid, question mark. This is coming off the false. So is valid. If it is, we've done this before. We're going to destroy actor at that point. If it isn't, we're going to spawn an actor, just like we did with the respawn script. So respawn actor from class. So we'll plug that in there. Off the not valid, we'll plug that in there. Now the class, however, this time, instead of choosing base character, it's going to come from our selected class. So we can take this class here and just plug that in. Spawn transform, we could use a random spawn assignment, kind of what we did over here. So I'm going to copy all this. So our respawn player, I'm just going to take all of this, copy it, and going to plug it in over here. So let's just paste all of that, plug that in like so. So that's our spawn transform. It'll get a random spawn point from all the spawn points that we have. And from there, we can say possess, uncheck this, and select possess. Let's connect that up. And let's connect the pawn. Target is a player controller. It's going to be this player controller here. So I'm going to add a reroute node. Just reroute. And pull that over and reroute. And that's going to be our player controller. So this is swapping the current character with the selected character from our character select widget. We're going to call this a little bit later. So let's comment on this and just say swaps the current character with the selected character from character select screen. Okay. So let's compile and save. Our game mode actually should be done. We shouldn't have any extra nodes in here. So our game mode is good. Let's close that out. We do need to go. Oh, you know what? There's one more thing we need to do in our game mode. I almost forgot. Let's open that up again. So we have, let's expand this, server settings. We have all the available characters, but we don't have the actual character classes themselves, so we need to create that. So let's create that. It's just a variable. We're going to create a variable because we're going to need this. So create a variable. Variable is going to be called, we'll just call it characters. So all of our available characters resides in our game mode here. So let's make this a character class. So character class here. It's going to be an array. And it's going to be replicated. And we'll put this in the server settings as well. So we're going to compile now. Now it's going to give us the ability to add array elements. So we're going to need to do this for all the characters that we want players to select from. So we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, because we have 8 characters plus the none, the base character. So we're going to assign this in the same order in which we did our buttons in our character select screen. So we're going to use this same layout because it's going to correspond to these same indexes. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll say 0 is the base character, 1 is barbarous, 2 is forge, 3 is frosty, 4 is natural, 5 is pit, 6 is robo, 7 is tusk, and 8 is warrior. So now we have all of our character classes here set. Now we can compile and save and close this out. Okay, up next is going to be inside of the lobby player controller blueprint. So our lobby player controller blueprint, let's go ahead and do that. Open that up. And we have one node here already called update available characters, which tells our client-side version of our player controller which characters we can select from. So let's go and do this real quick. This will be pretty easy to do. Did we create this variable already? Let me see. Nope, we didn't. All right. So what we'll do is take this available characters that's going to come from the server, from our game modes blueprint on the server. We'll promote this to a variable. So I'm going to right-click on this, promote this to a variable, which I'll call available characters as well. It'll be replicated, and it will exist in the, I'll just put it in player info. That's fine. So there. And with that, what we'll do is, let's see, widgets. Let's take our lobby menu widget here, control drag that in, drag off of this and say is valid, question mark. Has this been created already? I want to make sure that it's created before we start to do what we're about to do here. And if it hasn't been created, we're not going to do anything. If it has, what we're going to do is drag off of this and get the character select. So get character select. So, and from that we can say get character buttons that we created. So all of those buttons that we created, which we did at the start of this video. And we're going to say for each of these, for each loop, for each of these, what we want to do is let's see, get our available characters now. Control drag this in, get from it, and then we'll take our array index, plug that in. That's the one that we want to get. And we want to find out if this is not set to true. So just not Boolean. And we'll say for each of those buttons now, we'll say set is enabled. And we can connect this up, and we can connect this up. So essentially what this will do is if one of the available characters in here has been already assigned, it will set the corresponding button to not be enabled, is what we're saying here. So let's add a comment around this and say update available characters on the client, because this is executed on the owning client. Okay, a couple more things we'll do in here. Let's see, let's go ahead and handle the process of checking to see if a character has been already selected. So for this, what we'll do is we'll right click, custom event. This custom event will be called assign selected character. This is going to be executed on the server. So we'll say executed on the server, run on server. It's reliable. It's going to have a couple of inputs. So say 2 inputs. First input is going to be an integer. Second will be a texture, 2D. So texture reference 2D. And this will be character ID. And this will be character image. So let's compile it. Okay, what we're going to do now is we have this selected character variable that we created, which is our quote-unquote character ID. We need to store that off before we overwrite it with the potential new one. So I'm going to hold Control, drag that into the graph, then going to right-click on this and promote it to a variable, which I will call previous selection. We'll put it in player info. We'll replicate it as well. That's the first thing that we're going to do is set that off before we overwrite it. Next thing that we will do is let's take our character image and promote that to a variable. So we'll right click on this, promote this to a variable called character image. So character image, player info, and replicated. Connect that up like so. What we'll do now is take our selected character, hold Alt, drag that in, and we'll assign that as the potential new one now. So we'll take this and plug that in there. Okay. Now I'm going to create a function to handle the process of running through and checking to see which characters are or are not available. So I'm going to create a function called character check. I'll hop back to the event graph and call that now at the end of this. So add a comment around this and say handle character selection. Determine if character is available to be assigned. So, and again, this executes on the server. So everything after this will execute on the server as well. We'll come back to the character check here in a moment. We're going to finish off the event graph here. We're going to need a new custom event, so right-click, custom event. This custom event is going to be called assign player. And this one's going to be run on the owning client. So run on owning client, and it's going to be reliable. It's going to have a couple inputs. These inputs are going to represent the character class and character image of our selected character. So let's go ahead and change this to character class. Let's change this to, it's already set to texture 2D, so that's fine. Let's rename this to character. And we'll rename this to character image. Like so. Compile and save just because. Okay. So we've determined that, yes, we've ran through this check, and there'll be a function. We'll call this function inside of this. Once we've determined, yes, we can assign this character, well, we need to tell our player settings to update and save our game, and then tell everybody on the server to update as well. So we'll take our player settings here, hold Control, drag that in. We'll break this apart. Excuse me, not break it apart. Let's set members in it. So drag off of it, set members in player info. Right-click on this, restore all structure pins. And the only ones we're worried about here are the character. So we're going to drag that and assign that as my player character there. Character image is going to come through as my player character image. So let's pass that in there. And we'll remove the other ones. So I'm going to say remove this pin, and remove this pin, just so it's clear. Like so. Now we've set it locally on our player settings. We haven't saved it yet, so let's call save game, which will save this. Don't need to run a save game check, just save it. After that, we're going to call the call update function that we created. So let's do that. And that will pass this updated player info along. So let's go ahead and plug that in all the way over there. Didn't change status. We are updating our player info is what we did. So that's all we're going to do for this. So let's add a comment around this and say assigns selected character and tells everyone to update. So we have those three portions of script there. I think we are good. Let's compile and save. And let's go into the character check now. This will be the last thing that we will do here before we hop back into our character select and finish this off. So character check, go ahead and double click, open that up. And inside of this, first thing that we'll do is determine if we've selected the none option or our base character. So let's go and get our selected character value here, Control drag that in, hold B and left click for a branch, connect this up. Does this value equal 0, which is representative of our base character? Let's connect this up. So if it does, what we'll do is then take, let's see, we need to right click and say get game mode. Let's get the game mode. Cast to lobby game mode at that point. Can convert this to a pure cast. So right click on it, convert to pure cast. Move this over just a little bit more. We're going to get from it the available characters that exist on the server. Available characters, get available characters. And we're then going to drag off of this and say set array element. So set array element. This is off the true, so let's plug that in. And we're going to leave it as blank. And we're going to take our previous selection. That's the index that we're going to be setting at. So we're going to set the previous selection to blank. So whatever we've selected, we've come in and we've clicked the none button. It's going to run through this. So we've decided none, which is 0. It's going to come in here and say what was our previous selection that we had. We're going to make that character available by unchecking this. At that point, what we'll do is then call assign player. So connect this up. And what we'll need to do is off of our game mode, get the characters. So get characters. Get all of our characters. from it, get the selected character, which is going to be 0 in this case. And then that's going to be the character that we assign. So let me go ahead and move this over just a little bit. Plug that in like so. And character image is going to be this value here. So let's just take this and plug that on top. So that's the easy one. That's when we select none as our option. Move that down a little bit. Now we need to do what happens when we are selecting a different character. We need to make sure that that character already isn't selected. So what we'll do, we'll take our selected character here, copy this and paste it. We're going to take our available characters here, drag off this, and perform a get from it. So which one are we getting? Because it doesn't equal 0 anymore. We're then going to branch off the false here. So let's B and left click, create a branch, connect this up like so. We want to make sure that that value, hit 2 equal signs, does not equal true. So let's connect that like this. This is a really messy script, but it will work, I promise. So let's move this over a little bit more. So if we determine that the character that we are selecting from our available characters is true, we're not going to do anything because it's already selected. However, if it's false, at that point, then we're going to run a set array element. So let's go ahead and drag off of our available characters again and perform a set array element. Again, this is coming off the false here. So, and we're going to set it to true at this point because we're now assigning it. And it's going to be the selected character. So let's copy and paste this and just plug that in like so. Trying to keep these organized a little bit. Okay. And what we'll need to do now, though, let me select this stuff up here. Move this over just a little bit. We still need to set our previous selection back to false. So we had Frosty selected, and we choose to select Warrior, which we've done here. At that point, we need to run up here and set the previous selection of Warrior to false so that others can select it. So let's loop this around back up to there. Like so. And let me double check. I think that's all we need to do. I think we're good. So let's compile and save. And let's close this out. And let's go to our character select under lobby, character select, because we still need to finish this off, and then we should be able to test. So inside of here, we need to add an on-clicked for all of our buttons now. So we'll do empty button, add an on-clicked. And I'm going to try to do it again in the same order as this. So we'll go empty button, and then we'll go barbarous, add an on-clicked, and then we have forge, add an on-clicked. Then we have frosty, on-clicked, natural, and pit, and robo, tusk, warrior. So we need an on-clicked for each of those buttons. So I'm going to kind of just arrange them a little bit so they're a little bit closer to one another. Just makes it so I won't have to scroll around as much. So whenever I click on one of those buttons, we're going to do something. We're going to assign a character ID at this point. So we're going to need a new variable. This variable is going to be called character selection ID. It's going to be an integer. And let's go ahead and make sure that it's replicated. I'm not going to put it in a category because we're almost done with this script anyway. So for this, we'll set that now. Let me compile and hold Alt, drag it in. When we choose empty, it will be 0. Let's copy and paste this. We're going to need one of these for each of these buttons. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So hook all of these up, kind of align them. And let's connect all of these up. I need one more. Just copy and paste that and do one more. So empty button is going to be character ID 0. This is going to be 1. This is going to be 2, all the way down, 3, 4, 5, 6, not 60, 6, 7, and 8. So we compile. These values, again, should mirror what you have inside of your lobby game mode for the characters. So the character classes here should align with this. So 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way through 8. Should be the same here. Okay, once we've done that, what we're going to do is right-click, say get owning player, drag off this, cast to lobby player controller at that point. And all of these are going to do this, so I'm just going to hook all of these into it. So once we have all of these hooked up, we'll then call one of the functions that we created inside of our lobby player controller blueprint. So let's connect that up. And from our lobby player controller, let's call assign selected character. So assign selected character. It's asking for the character ID, which is going to be this value here. So we could take the character selection ID, plug that in. So, and because we did our naming convention very similar here, what we could do is take our character buttons. Once we have the character buttons, we can drag off of this and say get. And it's going to come from our character selection ID. So let's go ahead and just move that back over, plug that in like so. And that's going to be our character image that we're going to use. So I'm going to plug that in. It's actually not going to let me plug it in. Are these texture 2Ds? They better be texture 2Ds. These are the buttons, actually. I'm sorry. We do need to have one more variable. Let me delete this, actually. We need to create a variable holding our images. Actually, I thought we could pull it off the button. We could do it with a little bit extra work, but it's just even easier to do it like this. New variable called character images. And we could, let's see, make this texture 2D. Reference, make it an array. So let's compile. And now what we'll do is add 9 elements. So 0 through 8. And we'll assign these. So 0 is the UE4 logo card, potentially. So an empty character. 1 is Barbarous. 2 is Forge. 3 is Frosty. And let's see, 4 is Natural. And then 5 is Pit. 6 is Robo. 7 is Tusk. And I need one more element. 9 is Warrior. All the way down at the bottom. So those are our character images, our thumbnails. Actually, let me call it character images instead of whatever the heck I just called it. Let's say. So make sure those are all still there. All right. Yeah, let's do it this way. We could have done a for each loop on all of these, got the image, and then did some other script to populate this array, which is what I did before, but this way it's going to be even easier. So we'll take the character images now. We'll control drag that in, drag off this, perform the get from that array index. Now we should be able to plug this in. Yep. So there we go. And once we've selected our character, we're then going to set visibility of this character select widget that we're working in. Then I'm going to set that to hidden at this point. Last thing we need to do is on our back button here, add an on clicked for that. We're not going to do anything except set our visibility to hidden. So for our back button, just plug that in like so. So let's add a comment around this. And this is assign the selected character from the characters select menu. And actually, I'm going to add one more thing to this comment at the beginning. Attempt to assign, because it's not necessarily going to assign, it's attempt to assign. So with all of that, let's compile and save. And let's test this out. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. So on our server, we're hosting a game, blah, 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 blah. No, we're not going to do internet just yet. We'll do that next. Accept. Go in here. I can pick a character and say, let's do Frosty, which it changes me to Frosty, which is cool. There's Mr. Frosty. If I go into character select, Frosty is now deselected because I have him selected, but I could pick somebody like Tusk. My profile updates up there. It's kind of cool. And I can also select the character and pick none, which will turn this back to the UE4 logo card. We could set that to null too if we wanted, so it's consistent. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that too in a moment. But we can select any of these characters now. They should all work. We can all run around with them. Client can connect. Let's have a client connect. And when the client connects, Warrior should not be selectable. Let's accept. Should see that Warrior is selected there, so I can go in and select the character. Warrior is not selectable because our server has them selected. But the client, when he chooses a character, client will say, I'm going to pick Frosty, and it updates. So here's Frosty. Hello, Warrior. And over on the server side, we see that as well. Again, the server can pick somebody else. Warrior's deselected. He can pick Forge. Should update here, which it does. So we're making some great progress. We got a character select screen now working in multiplayer, so we can pick different characters. We're actually going to pause here, and we'll do a bit of polish towards the end here. I'll fix some of this other stuff that's bugging me. But we're going to pause here since our system is working. Up next, let's start working on the chat. Let's get the ability to have the client and server communicate with one another. So we'll do that next in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you then.